Welcome to Business Decoded with Ronnie Spellman. We crack the code so you don't have to.
Welcome to the Business Decoded podcast with Ronnie Spellman. We're back with my dear friend and guest, Carol MacGibbon. Carol, welcome back to the program.
Thank you.
Now, just to set up the conversation for our listeners and a brief reminder, you were part of the graduating class from West Point, the military academy, but you, more than just being a graduate, you were part of the first class of women graduates
Right.
from the academy.
1980, yes.
That is incredible. And for some people that might be listening, they know this is a business podcast. And as I mentioned in the last program, there's so many wonderful leaders that come out of our service academies, including West Point. I know quite a few of them. They're now leading major companies across the United States. And I think you and your husband came out, you served your time in the military, and then he went into private sector as a business executive. But there's something special about you and having entered, not knowing a lot about West Point too far before you applied to get in, because it was just, they were just open to women as you were looking to consider the university. But you told us about your experience in getting ready and sharpening up physically and mentally to be prepared for that first year. I am honored to have you. You know, that was nearly 50 years ago that you entered the campus, and just to hear your story on that transition into college and getting ready. But I think when we last spoke, we ended up with around the first year of you being at the academy, and you said by the second semester of your first year is when you started to feel really comfortable and you knew that you can make it. But how many women were part of that first class?
119 started.
Amazing.
On July 7th of 1976, and 62 graduated.
That's a large number. I know that some other schools on the private sector side, some of the others, even like a Citadel, they only started with one, maybe two, and it feels like it makes it a lot harder when you have a number that small. But with
Absolutely.
119, you could kind of coordinate, work together, and make sure you're providing a support system of sort, I would think.
Yes and no. The numbers were good, but for example, in what we call Beast Barracks, basic training that first summer, there were 2 rooms of women side by side, myself and my roommate, and next door were 3 women. My roommate and I were first squad, and they were second squad. I don't even remember the names of 2 of those women next door because they quit during the first summer.
Okay.
So the remaining girl moved into our room. So we had 3 in that room. But we were spread so thin in the Corps of Cadets.
Sure.
Basic training was one thing. Our platoon had 6 squads, and women were in the first 2 squads of that platoon.
Right.
So we're only in a fraction of each of these groups.
Right.
Then in the academic year, after Beast Barracks, and we dispersed all over to the 36 companies there. We were 36 companies.
Sure.
We were in every 3rd company that first year. So one regiment, I was in 3rd regiment, and there were companies Alpha through A3 through I3. I happened to be in G3. So a battalion was a group of 3 companies. So the women were in the A companies, the D companies, and the G companies.
Okay.
So G3 started with 9. But over the course of that first year, they realized that there were companies that were adamant that they would not graduate women, were very much opposed to women being there. So they decided at some point that by the second year, they wanted women in every company.
Okay.
So they divided us.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Now, some of the women in my company resigned, but others were shuffled out to another company. Mm-hmm. So in the second year, there was only 4 of us left of those 9 in G3.
Okay.
There were some still there who graduated, but graduated from a different company later on. And then the last 2 years, there was only 2 of us left. Mm-hmm. So I only had 2 roommates there, academic year roommates.
Sure.
Now, that girl who in Beast Barracks who was next door and got moved into my room ended up in G3 with me and was my roommate 6 semesters because the last 2 years we were the only 2 left.
Oh, wow.
And our days were so full from breakfast formation to taps. You were running to this class, running to that. It's a little bit different now.
Though, because I've asked athletes this in college, and people don't recognize what a day looks like for a college athlete, where they're getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, they're training, then they're going to class, and after class, they're training again or weightlifting, whatever. It's intense, as you just described. What would a day look like then, and maybe a day look like now for?
Then everyone. The athletes all did the same classes. The only difference for athletes was they could come to dinner late, a little bit late.
But how early were you getting up in the morning? And I presume you had lights out.
Breakfast, I want to say breakfast formation was maybe 6:20-ish or something like that. So in January, you're out on the concrete, standing in formation with that
in
wind,
New York.
wind coming off the Hudson River and freezing before you march into the mess hall for breakfast. We did that all 4 years. It's changed significantly over the last decades. I don't know how many more meals that are mandatory for one thing, and how many they march to is another. I know dinner's only mandatory once a week now. So a lot of that has changed. But the athletes, the teams, sat together in one wing of the mess hall, and they were allowed to come into the mess hall maybe 20 minutes late or something like that. So we would be sitting down and eating, announcements were all done, and they would come walking down the mess hall and go to their tables a little bit late. That was the only exception made. We had Saturday classes. Friday night, we were cleaning our rifles for inspection the next morning and studying for the next classes on Saturday. So that has changed. They've got more free time now, but I don't think the academic load has changed. They have just changed how they manage it and schedule the classes and things like that. But you still have all the mandatory phys ed classes, plus every cadet has to be in some kind of activity, whether it's a Division I sport, a club sport, or intramurals a couple times a week.
Were they women's sports back then? Division I?
Some. Some. I don't know if they were division from the first year.
Right.
The basketball team did well from the get-go.
Okay.
They did well. I can't remember. I was a gymnast, and we had a handful of gymnasts, enough to put together a team, but there wasn't that many of us.
Right.
Other teams, obviously, over the years, they've developed more teams, but our choices were a little bit limited, of course.
I think a mutual friend of ours was part of the second class and played on the basketball team, if I remember correctly.
They were making it up as they went along, too, and finding, they didn't have... I don't know I was thinking about that the other day. Where'd they get the uneven bars? Because men don't use uneven bars in gymnastics. So they had to jump through hoops to get things ready for us.
Right. Now, speaking of that, though, what was that portion like walking in? Because they didn't have a chance to build new dorms or build women's rooms, restrooms, or what was that? Well,
they put some walls up. The barracks I was in, there are 3 wings of barracks that are very, very long hallways. I was in one of those, 6 stories. And 4 latrines, so 2 parallel hallways with latrines in the middle. So you could enter the latrine from either one of those hallways. So what they did is walled off one of those middle ones for women. There were adjustments. We could talk so long about this because the guys were mad they couldn't walk around in their underwear anymore. So and there were some funny stories too.
Were any that you can share? I can only imagine. Every college.
I don't even know that I can come to mind really quickly. We were issued summer weight bathrobes.
Okay.
And the men had them too.
Right. Just
this thin cotton thing. And we had shower shoes. So we had a uniform to go to the latrine, if you can believe that, in this short bathrobe, a towel over your left arm, and the soap dish in your left hand. And we had to, square corners and walk along the walls and go to the bathroom like that if you happened to be in that uniform. And we also had to do blister inspections the first summer with our squad leader because we were doing forced marches.
Right.
And breaking in boots. So our squad would line up and go to the squad leader had to show them our feet one way or another. And apparently there was a little bit of inadvertent flashing going on with those bathrobes. So we had to the women had to turn them in, and they put snaps on the bathrobes.
Okay.
We were told at one point that first year, I think the first summer, they were going to put shades in the women's room because men were looking in our rooms with binoculars. Mm-hmm. That's not what you wanted to hear at that school.
Sure.
The second year, cadets were issued at that time something called a blazer uniform, which was a little bit more casual. So you could go to concerts at Eisenhower Hall. I mean, we had Elton John, we had Three Dog Night, we had some big names back then, right? And you had to go to those if it was, depending on the time of year, in white over gray uniform, the white short sleeve shirt, button down shirt, and gray trousers, or that ancient looking dress gray uniform that zips up with the black collar. Well, upperclassmen had the privilege of wearing the blazer uniform, which for the guys was black slacks, a white shirt, black blazer, and a tie to go to a rock concert, right? Kind of funny when you look at it. So the women, they gave us skirts.
Okay.
And again, you're walking down to wherever, you're walking in a skirt in February in 6 inches of snow. So they would survey us all the time on what we thought of this, what we thought of that, how were things going. We were guinea pigs.
Sure.
So we must have asked for long pants with that uniform. So I could sew, and it was probably in my application. I could make clothes. I mean, that's some math and engineering in there when you stop and think about it. But I don't know how they asked me. But the supply officer for the Corps of Cadets, a lieutenant colonel, came to me and asked me to design pants for the women's blazer uniform. Yeah. So I did that, and I turned in my recommendation. And by now, I'm a rabble-rouser. I wasn't the first part of the year. The first year. So I'm sitting on the rabble-rouser tables in the mess hall. That's cheerleaders. Mm-hmm. And this lieutenant colonel comes up to me with a big smile on his face. He was a short guy, always had a big smile. Never saw the man without a smile. Red apple cheeks, big smile, and he has something over his arm. And he walks up to me and says, "Carol, I have your pants." And there's silence around the table for a few seconds, and everyone just bust out laughing. So you have to admit it was kind of funny. So unique moments like that. Sure. The first 2 classes of women were issued full dress coats, the coat with all the brass buttons, without tails. Okay. I don't know who made that decision, because that happened before we got there, because they thought it would make our backsides look a little too prominent, I guess you could say. But it didn't work. Those were short waistcoats. So you'd sit down and you'd end up with a gap. Right. And getting back up and you're tucking things in. It just wasn't working very well and didn't look right in parades and things. So again, I don't know how my name got thrown in the hat, but they made prototype full dress coats with tails for me and one other woman in the class. And we had to report to the superintendent, 3-star general, in our new full dress coats and do about face in front of his desk a couple of times. And they gave the thumbs up to the full dress coats with tails, which is sort of fun. And what they explained to us then was we had to turn in the old one, and there was only a couple hundred of these made.
Okay.
And at graduation, we could buy it back for half price. Okay. So my closet has 3 full dress coats. My husband's and both of mine.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow.
My daughter wants that.
That's pretty amazing.
So some funny things happen too.
No, it's what you mentioned though, that ability to have the trial and error isn't uncommon for any organization, right? Private business that's starting up is you figure it out as you go, you adjust. You don't necessarily get upset over it. You just try to figure out what works and works well. And it's a little trial and error, even at one of the most established institutions in the country.
It was. I remember, too, they had us, the women in the latrines, doing pull-ups every night. Okay. Just because they had no standards. They had no way to measure our physical fitness. They were making it up as they went along. Yeah.
I love it. And again, it's not a bad thing. It's just, they did what they needed to do to try to make sure that they understood how to adjust, which is, you give them a lot of credit for that.
I give the school credit because I don't know if there was polls, there were studies, I know, but I don't remember some of it, and I don't know that my eyes were on a lot of it. But I would say a good 95% of the Corps of Cadets was against women being there.
Sure.
And that was largely because of the physical requirements,
Right.
and women could not be commissioned in combat branches
Sure.
at the time. And I understood the anger.
Right.
I understood the anger. This was a school that was all male for 174 years, and we invaded their space.
Right.
Not the other way around. And if you were one of those women who came in with pushing the women's issues and being outspoken, that did not go over well at all.
Right.
I think I knew very early that you had to keep your mouth shut and work as hard as you possibly could and just see where the chips fell.
Right.
And we had to show them what we could do.
Right.
And again, making that up as, I didn't go to their self-defense classes until I got there. I didn't do the morning PT and the runs and the rifle PT. I didn't know that I could. It turns out I could.
Right.
But nobody knew. So I wasn't trying to shove it down their throats. If you were trying to do that, it did not go over well at all.
So, Carol, when we fast forward to today, what does it look like now for women at the university, at the academy? So
I think
it's a lot more numbers, more than 119 or so.
It's about, last I saw was about 22% women.
Okay.
I think when we graduated it was about 15%.
Okay.
So it's up. Women been, I don't think they think about it.
Right.
I don't think they think about it much.
And that's a good thing.
I think it's important that cadets can see each other as friends.
Yes.
And I really think it comes down to individual personalities.
Yes. Well, friends and team members as well, right?
Friends and teammates.
Yes.
Friends and teammates. And of course, there's the romances, and you can argue that becomes a little sticky here and there.
Sure.
But that's a whole other thing.
Sure.
But I think they're seen a bit more as equals, but you have to pull your weight.
Absolutely.
You have to pull your weight.
Yeah. So what was graduation like? So you made it through 4 years. What was that day like? What was your parents' response and your brother's response and the rest of the family?
Well, my parents were of course very proud, and they weren't talkers. I think that World War II generation, they weren't really they weren't talkers, and I wish we had spoken more, but they didn't. They were very proud. I could see that. I would see them about once a year. They'd come to the school because they could drive it, come to one football game or something like that. I did one significant thing. In a way, I mean, after the first summer, they wouldn't let the press in anymore. Okay. I mean, I remember doing grass drills with a microphone a foot from my face in Beast Barracks. And I didn't ask for them to do that. And I didn't respond to any questions or anything like that. My squad leader kept, looking down the squad, and learned a lot about the media from literally from day one. But they wanted to recognize the women, but not overdo it.
Right.
Because anytime we were pulled aside for this training or that training or this discussion, the guys didn't like that at all. I remember at the end of the first summer doing a confidence course, and I might get off track with your question here, but I tend to do that, doing a confidence course, up and down mud, 6, 8, 10 feet of mud, up pugil sticks.
Right.
There were pyrotechnics going off, and so explosions and gas bombs and all kinds of things, and you're coughing and spitting and doing the pugil stick stuff, and you're disgusting and wiped out at the end of it. And a major in public relations asked me to go sit in a bunch of flowers so reporters could take a picture. And I said, "Sir, do I have to?" Knowing the guys were watching.
Right.
And he made me go do that. So it was very awkward. Right. So anyway, at graduation, after the first year, our first superintendent was opposed to women being there. And it wasn't a secret. He left after that year.
Okay.
And they brought back Sidney Berry, who had been not Sidney Berry, General Goodpaster.
Yes.
Goodpaster came out of retirement as a 4-star and dropped a star and wore the uniform with 3 stars to be the superintendent at West Point because they just had an honor scandal too. So the honor scandal took a little bit of the heat off of the women. Sure. So they had the women coming in at the same time they had an honor scandal. And he was there, I think, 5 years. He just, a great man.
Yes.
And his class, he was class of 1939.
Right.
At graduation, it was maybe 2 days before, so parents are here for all the graduation activities, parade and everything. He had about a 1-hour reception in the superintendent's yard under this gigantic beech tree there. And they presented a small little silver tray engraved with our name in West Point, class of 1980, and a little piece of paper, nice paper written from some friends in the class of 1939. And I learned maybe 25 years later that it said from some friends in the class of 1939 because not all of the class of 1939 wanted to acknowledge us.
Okay.
So they gave us that little tray and a little ceremony, very quiet, which I thought was great. There was one photo taken of all of us. Life magazine was allowed in around graduation week. And the oldest barracks there, the first division, and there's one photo of all the women taken.
Wow.
So that was kind of special. So my parents were proud, but didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
Really didn't talk to me about it.
So 62 women graduated that
Yes.
day. That's incredible. Absolutely amazing. Tell us about some of the traditions and the history. So you mentioned it was founded by Thomas Jefferson. Buzz Aldrin is a graduate, Ulysses S. Grant, and so many other wonderful leaders. As I mentioned, a lot of leaders in the private sector that I wouldn't be able to mention them all, but tell us about some of the great traditions and the lessons learned in leadership that you carried with you after leaving.
Oh, that's a hard question. We talk a long time about that.
Go for it. That's what
I don't know where to begin.
Yeah.
I think it was about 18 months ago, maybe 2 years ago, Elon Musk was at West Point speaking.
Oh, wow.
And my oldest grandchild is my grandson who lives there now.
Yes.
And loves, for whatever reason, his dad's an electrical engineer.
Yes.
The kid loves Teslas.
Okay.
So we would ride around the road, there's Tesla, and he'd, point them all out. And so my son-in-law took him to listen to Elon Musk speak. And I saw a little bit about that online at the end of that talk, of kind of a fireside chat type of thing with the dean, I believe. He said, America is like the Atlas of the free world, and you are the arms of Atlas.
Wow.
And that really struck a chord with me because I feel if America falls, we're the hope of the world.
Right.
If we fall, I don't know. It's going to be very dark for a long time, I think. For whatever reasons, we've got ourselves in that position. Well, there's a lot of reasons we have. And there's always a threat. You think, I just listened to a book, I believe by David McCullough about John Adams, and it was fascinating. Because of the 250th birthday of the country this year, I want to relearn some things I've forgotten and learn some things I didn't know before. What the founding fathers did, and I've said this in a couple of my speeches, was absolute genius. Yes. That they came together and took from history. We copied some from the Greeks, I know, but the first government founded the way it was founded, and they risked everything. Yeah. I've also learned some of them spoke Latin or French or German or some other language. They were very educated, some of them.
Yes.
And you wouldn't think that in the 1700s. And the way they spoke, if you listen to the quotes, it's unbelievable, which makes me a little bit sad that we stepped, I think, significantly away from that. But the risk they took to create a government that wasn't led by an emperor or a king or a Kaiser or anything, that's what the world knew in the 1700s. That's what they knew.
Right.
And to have the courage to do that. But it would never have happened if men were not willing to pick up arms to defend freedom.
Absolutely.
And when I think about my family, my grandfather, World War I, my father, World War II, my husband and I were never in harm's way, thank goodness, but Cold War.
Yes.
And the threats, there were threats during the Cold War. And now, obviously, the global war on terror, which is not over by any means.
Right.
The threats will never go away.
And you mentioned your daughter specifically, though, was overseas. And you want to tell us the story again? I think we had that conversation in the first episode.
Okay. She's my oldest and was commissioned in 2007. So there was more going on in the year she was active duty than with my younger kids. But at one point was sent to join a unit that was in Germany that was already deployed to Afghanistan. She joined an infantry battalion. She was the adjutant in an infantry battalion. And oddly enough, when she landed there, the battalion commander says, well, when we get back to Germany, you can't be in this battalion because women can't be in infantry.
Okay.
That didn't seem to make sense to anybody.
Right.
But she was there 9 months and was a senior female on the forward operating base.
Wow.
Senior female on the FOB, and ended up commanding a female engagement team and went on missions with the infantry and searched Afghani women and children, taught nutrition classes, sanitation classes, things like that.
Incredible.
And another fascinating little note, I had to do some research for a talk a few years ago, the 40th anniversary of women starting at West Point, or graduating from West Point, I guess, is that it was pointed out to me by a one-star general, female one-star general, who was an intelligence officer who served in Delta Force for many years, that our female soldiers who are deployed have access to the women in those cultures, and the women know what the men are doing. So it's a huge intelligence asset. Yes. So they're contributing in that way as well, which you don't stop and think about too much. So
that's quite fascinating.
Anyways, I in my, in your high school years, even before that, and then if you take history in college, you learn, and especially the school I went to, we learn the wars, we learn the battles, we learn the generals, we learn the dates, we learn the names. But I think it took quite a while for it to sink in with me how significant it was, the founding of this country, and changed the world.
It did.
It changed the world.
And it's still changing the world.
And it's still changing the world, and we cannot lose it.
Right.
We cannot lose that.
Right. Carol, absolutely. Any other unique leadership lessons that you would share? So if you were hosting a review session with a potential candidate, which you've done for a few years to get into West Point, what were you looking for? What would you ask that candidate looking to go to West Point?
Well, they're looking for well-rounded leaders of character. Okay. That's what West Point is looking for. And they truly mean that. They mean well-rounded. You can have 1550 SATs. I just have one candidate who had a promise, what we call a letter of assurance to get in, and she didn't pass the fitness test.
Okay.
So you have to have the physical fitness. You have to have the leadership, which is activities, being involved in your school, being involved in a sport, hopefully, and the academics, of course. Now, there's a whole spectrum on all of those things. Mm-hmm. So there's no perfect candidate. There's very few what we would, I met West Point had 3 Heisman Trophy winners.
Oh, yeah.
Pete Dawkins, Glenn Davis, Doc Blanchard. The latter 2 were in the 40s, and Pete Dawkins graduated in the 50s. I want to say 58. He was unique in that he was a Rhodes Scholar, Heisman Trophy winner, captain of the football team, and first captain of the Corps of Cadets. That is extremely rare. That's the ideal we look for. But, let's say average SAT for an incoming class of cadets is around, I want to say 1250, 1280, somewhere in there, average. But that means fully half the class is below that.
Right.
So they look at the whole candidate They look at those 3 pillars: academics, athletics, leadership. But for the whole class, they're targeting to have the scholars, the athletes, and the leaders as well. So they're looking for Eagle Scouts, team captains. They're looking for the high SATs, ACTs. They're looking for class presidents, so on and so forth. Yeah. So we like to talk to candidates early, which is hard to do. So they have time to make those choices in high school. But it's the character too. Sure. I'm understanding from friends who are teachers. I substitute taught for years, and I'm understanding cheating is more prevalent than it used to be.
Okay. Interesting.
And somewhat accepted. And now we have AI.
Right.
So the honor part of it, I always stress the honor part of it, because in my day, you'd see cadets accused of honor. They would have the time for an honor board, which was run by cadets. Right. But you could come back from class and the other half of your room was empty because your roommate was on the way home because they were found guilty of an honor violation. Oh, wow. It was that fast. Now it goes on months with lawyers and everything. But you can be thrown out for an honor violation. Sure. As an Army platoon leader, the way they used to say it to us is, if you are on a mission to your objective for that day, and they're going to call in artillery, and you're supposed to be at these coordinates at a certain time, but you're not, and you report back that you are, they might call in artillery on you. Right. So you have to be able to trust officers. Right. You just absolutely have to be able to trust officers. So the character part of it is huge. I want to hear a candidate without prompting tell me that they want to serve this country.
Nice.
They want to serve, because I don't know where it comes from, because my father really never said it out loud. And I don't even know if my mother's family served, but there's a part of me that feels everyone should take their turn. I think you grow up a lot if you serve in the military, even one tour, serve a little bit, and you kind of understand what this is all about.
And I admire our service. I grew up in a military community. We had the Navy there, we had the Air Force, and a lot of other branches, an Army facility not far by. But it is. I wish I could have more conversation, and I probably should. We should have this as a part of our list of things on the program, but more talk about the honor that you mentioned in the private sector, which often translates into a corporate culture. But having that honor and that teamwork, I think more companies could benefit from those same values that are taught at West Point.
Well, I'm laughing because on our very first day, we learned cooperate and graduate.
Yes.
Cooperate and graduate. They told us, look to the left, look to the right. At graduation, one of you will be gone. And that was true. And I'm laughing too because I talked before about my husband's kidney transplant. And we went to his screening for his kidney transplant. It was 5 hours. We saw 5 different people, nurse, doctor, insurance, yada, yada. So we're driving home and he's getting a little bit emotional because I was hoping to be able to donate a kidney to him. And he was getting a little bit emotional about it because it was getting real now. Mm-hmm. And I could tell he didn't want to ask me to do that.
Right.
So I said to him, well, put the shoe on the other foot. If it was me, would you donate a kidney to me? And he thought for a second and he says, yeah. And I said, well, shut up. We're a team. We're same team. And then I paused and I said, but I do think you're taking this cooperate and graduate rather literally. And he just cracked up. So that was kind of funny.
I've been working with an organization recently, and one of the first items I identified is that they all on the same team, organization, decent sized operation, several $100 million in revenue. They all work in silos. So they have all these team meetings, but it didn't feel like they were working as a team. They go back and kind of work in their silos, and you can see the tension and the conflict, and then working against, in some cases, the other departments. And what you all do at West Point, we need to have more of in our organizations.
That makes me think of delivering mail. When we were, I don't know when they stopped doing this, but the plebes delivered mail.
Right.
And at some point they stopped that. I think they probably realized that, this probably might not be legal.
Sure.
But anyway, so we did. So you did not want to be the head mail carrier, plebe duties. Right. You could be a mail carrier, but you didn't want to be the head mail carrier because they were always being yelled at, and it was a bad week when you
Sure.
had that duty. So we tried to get back from class and get to that kid's room, and they were sorting it by squad and deliver mail to your squad. We did the same thing we had to deliver laundry. We had to deliver linen. So we learned to work together, plebe year, that way to help each other out.
Right.
And if you were really good at swimming, hopefully you were helping somebody with swimming or with the indoor obstacle course or English or math or whatever it was. And they really drove that home to help each other.
Right. And part of my recommendation to this one organization, you just made me think of it. So you have the companies within the military. I was looking to do something similar, to have them work in almost pods, because even within certain departments, they still work alone when they should not have been. So I put them in pods or teams so that you can have one cross-training, you can have a line of succession, and you can have a little bit more collaboration in what they're doing. So again, there's so much that I think other industries and segments can learn from West Point and their leadership. I know they have a great leadership academy there as a part of the university. And they bring, I believe, executives back to West Point for that program.
Yes, they do. Yeah.
Yeah.
My daughter-in-law was involved in that.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Carol, it is a pleasure to have you here as we celebrate 250 years of the United States of America and 50 years of when women first joined the West Point. And I'm just excited to have you on the program.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Congratulations, though, as you look to retire from some of your service with making that selection process for West Point. And I heard that you're getting into painting now, which is exciting.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, having fun with that. Yeah.
So, well, thanks again for joining us.
Thank you very much, Ronnie.
Thanks for joining us on the Business Decoded podcast with Ronnie Spellman.
Stay ahead of the curve. Subscribe right now. We will see you at the next episode.